Why does life seem so unfulfilling? Nothing seems to make us truly happy. We get bored just doing normal things, and then we get bored even doing fun things like going on vacation. Then we have the wedding that we waited for all of our life, and it isn't really what we thought it would be. The marriage isn't like a Hallmark movie. The newborn screams all the time. The teenager doesn't want to talk to us. Work is exhausting. Nothing satisfies us. What's the problem? Because we never thought life was going to be this way. But let's hear from someone who had it all, and he'll give us the answer. Today, let's answer this question. Why does life feel so unfulfilling? Like, think about this. Nothing really makes us happy, like truly happy. We go on vacation and we get bored. The wedding that we've waited for all of our life isn't really what we thought it would be. The marriage isn't like our Hallmark movie or The Notebook. Having a baby we thought would be super fun, and yet the baby screams and spits up and keeps us up at night, and that makes us miserable. And then our teenagers, as they get older, they want nothing to do with us. We go to work and it just feels exhausting. Nothing really satisfies us. So what is the problem? Because none of us really thought life would be that way. So good news is I do have an answer for you. And it comes from the Bible, and it actually comes from someone who had it all. He had everything anyone would ever want to make him potentially happy, potentially fulfilled in life. This was a man who had money, status, fame. He could go anywhere he wanted. He could buy anything he wanted. He could do whatever he wanted. This man was a builder. This man had multiple beautiful foreign wives and girlfriends, and nothing, and I mean nothing, satisfied him. His name was Solomon, the king of Israel, the son of King David. The wealthiest man by standards back then, but even by today's standards, he would still be the wealthiest man in the world. And so he personally wrote sort of like a journal. We know it as the book of Ecclesiastes in the Old Testament. And I will tell you this, that it was a verse in this book, Ecclesiastes, that changed my life of feeling very unfulfilled and dissatisfied. And one verse literally changed the course of my life. Because I was like Solomon, clearly not famous and clearly not rich, but I was questioning life and I was questioning my faith. What was life really all about? I would say I was a Christian, but honestly, nothing in my life had ever changed. Life really just kind of felt futile. I felt like a hamster on a wheel, and I was just trying to keep up with everyday life. We had lots of kids. Marriage was kind of difficult. Life just felt meaningless. And then I had a moment where I was sitting at a stoplight, and I thought, what is wrong with me? Why am I so miserable? Why is life so challenging? And I didn't really know what to do with that. So I went to a Christian bookstore. It was kind of my last attempt to decide what was wrong with me. I picked up a book by Chuck Swindoll on the life of David. And honestly, it rocked my world to realize that God was so intimately involved in David's life. And I'm not sure why that never occurred to me, that God was involved that way with mine too. I just never let him. That was my problem. So I went back and picked up another book because we were going out of town, and it was another Chuck Swindoll book called Living on the Ragged Edge. And this book was all about Ecclesiastes and Solomon's life, about this rat race of life, and why we can have everything and feel miserable and feel nothing. How we can live on this earth surrounded by kids and friends and families and fun and still walk away feeling completely empty. And then I read the phrase that Solomon used in this little book in the Bible. I can tell you exactly where I was when I read these words. We were in Cabo San Lucas, Mexico. I was sitting on the patio, and God used this phrase in this book, living under the sun, which we see. We'll see it over and over again in Ecclesiastes. And that little phrase, living under the sun, is what God used to wake me up and change my life. Because here's what I realized, that nothing, and I mean nothing, will ever satisfy you on this earth under the sun. Now, what Solomon says seems a little bit like bad news to us, but if you hang in there today, I will give you the good news, which is Solomon's conclusion about life. Because what he says in this book, through this little book, sounds kind of depressing. But in a weird way, it will make total sense to all of us. Because even though we don't have billions of dollars and the ability to go anywhere we want, what he says will resonate with us because it's what we've all felt at one time or another. So look at Ecclesiastes 1. The words of the teacher, son of David, king in Jerusalem. Verse 2 says this, meaningless, meaningless, says the teacher, utterly meaningless. Everything is meaningless. And we're like, are you joking, Solomon? You have everything anyone could ever want. How could you say it's meaningless? But he does. And he starts off with saying, it kind of is all about work. Work is meaningless. You get up and go to work in the morning, and then you come home, and then you go to sleep, and then you do it all again. For what? To make money, to pay bills, to bide our time until what? We die? That seems kind of meaningless. Verse 3, look what he says. What does man gain from all his labor at which he toils? There's our word, under the sun. Under the sun, which means living life horizontally. We're looking around us. Under the sun is everything around us. We're trying to fulfill our life by things horizontally around us on this earth. Solomon says it's meaningless. Every single thing under the sun is meaningless and unfulfilling. And he explains why. Verse 4, he says, generations come and generations go. The earth remains forever. Like generations, our generation will be here, and then we're going to leave, and then the next, and then it's just this constant. Rob's brother brought over a box the other day, and in it were pictures he had never seen before, of his great-great-grandparents. These pictures were probably from the early 1900s. And Rob didn't even know who they were. On the back, thankfully, his mom would write, this is so-and-so, grandpa so-and-so of whoever, whatever. Rob didn't even know his great-great-grandfather's name. And what Solomon says rings true. The exact thing is going to happen to us. Rob and I say all the time, our great-great-grandkids will never know us. Because that's just life. That's just the way. Solomon says that's just life. Generations come and go. Verse 11, there's no remembrance of men of old. And even those who are yet to come will not be remembered by those who follow. The sun rises and the sun sets and hurries back to where it rises. Everything is monotonous. It just is. Every day you get up, you go to work, you take the kids to school, you feed the baby, you make lunches, you make dinner, clean up, go to the grocery store, do laundry, day in and day out, day in and day out. It just doesn't change. He says in verse 6, the wind blows to the south and turns to the north. Round and round it goes, ever returning on its course. All streams flow into the sea, yet the sea is never full. To the place the streams come from, there they return again. All things are wearisome, more than one can say. The eye never has enough of seeing, nor the ear its fill of hearing. And that feels depressing. And in itself, kind of is. But there really is good news. But before the good news, we have to really see what Solomon did to try to fulfill his life. He tried this, education and wisdom. I picture him reading philosophy or books on astrology or science, anything he could learn, in hoping that in the process he would feel fulfilled. But look at verse 12. He says, I, the teacher, was king over Israel and Jerusalem. I devoted myself to study and to explore by wisdom all that is done under heaven. What a heavy burden God has laid on men. I have seen all the things that are done, here you go, under the sun. All of them are meaningless, a chasing after the wind. What is twisted cannot be straightened. What is lacking cannot be counted. I thought to myself, look, I have grown and increased in wisdom more than anyone has ruled over Jerusalem before me. I've experienced much of wisdom and knowledge. Then I applied myself to the understanding of wisdom and also the madness and folly, but I learned that this, too, is chasing after the wind. For with much wisdom comes much sorrow, the more knowledge, the more grief. Isn't that amazing? He's saying, I go to school, I learned all of these things, education, and that didn't work. That actually caused him sorrow and pain. So he decided he would try something else. He's like, all right, I'm going to do this. I'm going to go for fun. I'm going to go for the party scene. So he goes for laughter and wine. Look at Ecclesiastes 2:1. I thought in my heart, come now, I will test you with pleasure to find out what's good. But that also proved to be meaningless. Laughter, I said, is foolish. And what does pleasure accomplish? I tried cheering myself with wine and embracing folly. My mind is still guiding me with wisdom. I wanted to see what was worthwhile for men to do under heaven during the few days of their lives. He says it's all meaningless. Have fun. Go to the party. It doesn't last. You walk away feeling more empty than you did before. So he says, all right, I got an idea. I'm going to build. I'm going to be a builder. I'm going to build a business. I'm going to build whatever. So here's what he did in verse 4. I undertook great projects. I built houses for myself and planted vineyards. I made gardens and parks and planted all kinds of fruit trees in them. I made reservoirs to water groves of flourishing trees. See, for you, you may have built businesses. You may have worked on projects, but in the end, I know this is going to sound horrible. Nobody really is going to remember you. Rob built a business with 3 of our boys, 4 of them to begin with, 3 eventually. The majority of the people that work there, they don't even know Rob's name anymore. That's just the way it is. That feels defeating. I get it. So Solomon goes on and thinks he'll be fulfilled if he could just amass riches. Money's going to make me happy. So he says this in verse 7, I bought male and female slaves and had other slaves who were born in my house. I also owned more herds and flocks than anyone in Jerusalem before me. I amassed silver and gold for myself and the treasure of kings and provinces. I acquired men and women, singers, and a harem as well, that delights the heart of man. I became greater by far than anyone in Jerusalem before me, and all my wisdom stayed with me. I denied myself nothing my eyes desired. I refused my heart no pleasure. My heart took delight in all my work, and this was the reward for my labor. Yet when I surveyed all that my hands had done and what I had toiled to achieve, everything was meaningless, a chasing after the wind. Nothing was gained, here you go, under the sun. And Solomon writes 12 chapters that tells us over and over how futile and meaningless life is. And he knows it because he lived it. He built, he learned, he laughed, he got rich. He did everything that we think is going to make us happy. And it didn't for him, and it won't for us. So what Solomon's conclusion to a fulfilled life is this. Stop living for things under the sun. Start living for God who is above the sun. Isn't that amazing? What Solomon said about living under the sun is what changed my life. I suddenly realized that the reason why I was miserable was because I was focusing on everything around me to make me happy. And I realized I was focusing on everything under the sun. Under the sun, where there's lots of pain and hurt and tears and sickness and sadness and drama and all that kind of stuff. But to live a life fulfilled, suddenly it dawned on me, oh my gosh, I'm stuck living under the sun. But I can live under the sun, above the sun, doing things for God who lives above the sun, where everything in my life under the sun is about God who lives above the sun. And suddenly, I began to have a fulfilled life. See, we can't live for ourselves in pleasure and wealth. It'll never, ever make us happy. Because when the vacation is over, when the bar closes down, when the crowd goes away, when the stock market crashes, the big job is complete, and now you got to start all over, there is nothing but an empty feeling, wondering, what in the world is the point to it all? We feel that. We wake up the next morning, the music's gone, the friends are gone, and we go, wow, that was fun for a minute, but I feel so lonely. It's why people like Robin Williams, a funny man, a funny comedian, had everything, money, fame, everything, and he commits suicide. What is that all about? It's why Whitney Houston dies in a bathtub, because nothing satisfies her, even her drugs. It's never enough. And in the end, Solomon tells us the formula. He says it in Ecclesiastes 12, verse 13. He said this, after everything, after all has been heard, here is the conclusion of the matter. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. Fear God, keep his commandments. For God will bring every deed into judgment, including everything hidden thing, whether it's good or evil. See, how to be fulfilled in this life is to do what Solomon says. We're supposed to live under the sun. We can't really get away from that. But we live above the sun, putting God in everything we do. We start looking upward, living in the light of him. God, what can we do to live for you? Because living for God and living life for him, that's when we're going to be the most satisfied. For me, I wake up in the morning, and God is my very first thought. Before I go to bed, God is my very last thought. I'm constantly thanking him for Jesus, who made my salvation possible, because I know I get to spend eternity in heaven. I thank him for my home, my family, my friends. I thank him for my ministry and the ability to point people to him. And that feeling I felt so many years ago, that feeling of what is the purpose in life, I don't ever feel that way anymore. Because I know my Creator. And I'm living for him above the sun. I'm not living for things on this earth under the sun that will never, ever satisfy me. So do you want to feel fulfilled in this life under the sun? Then stop living horizontally for the things that you just see around you. And start living under the sun for God who is above the sun. That verse, like I said, changed my life. Now, that doesn't mean we shouldn't enjoy life. Of course we should enjoy life. God wants us to enjoy life. He gives us all of this beautiful earth and beautiful lakes and rivers and oceans. Like, go enjoy it. Solomon reminds us that we should enjoy life and we should enjoy our family and friends and fun. But the difference is that when we're living it horizontally under the sun, it's what we're trying to grab to make us happy. But it's different when we take everything, our family, friends, the fun stuff, the vacation, and we add God into it. We say, God, thank you for the ocean. Thank you for the camping trip. Thank you for my children. Thank you for being able to see the things I'm able to see. Ecclesiastes 5, verse 18, Solomon says this, then I realized that it's good and proper for a man to eat and drink and to find satisfaction in his toilsome labor under the sun during the few days of life God has given him, for this is his lot. Moreover, when God gives any man wealth and possessions and enables him to enjoy them, to accept his lot and be happy in his work, this is a gift from God. He seldom reflects on the days of his life because God keeps him occupied with gladness of heart. See, if you and I want purpose in life and we want to enjoy this life on this earth, then you know what? We need to live under the sun with an over-the-sun mentality. And we do that by everything we do is pointed to God. Everything we do is done to glorify God, to praise him, to thank him, to pray to him, he's a part of everything. And when he's a part of everything, then we feel fulfilled. Hopefully, that helped you today. I want you to feel purpose. I know everyone wants to feel purpose, but I know the only way to do that is through having a relationship with God, and that is through Jesus alone. If you've never given your life to Jesus, you need to make that your sole goal today, and then start living your life above the sun. Even though we're stuck down here on this earth, living above the sun is what's going to satisfy you and fulfill you. Hopefully that helps you. Have a good day.